There is a moment you might recognize. You decide something will change. A habit, a relationship dynamic, the way you speak in meetings, the way you think about money. For a few days, maybe a few hours, behavior shifts. Then something subtle happens. The system pulls you back. The pull rarely feels dramatic. It feels like hesitation, fatigue, doubt, a familiar narrative quietly returning. Underneath that experience, a biological process is running. The brain organizes experience through prediction. Every repeated behavior strengthens a neural pathway. Neurons that activate together increase their connection strength. Repeated activation reduces the energy required to run that circuit. Over time, clusters of reinforced pathways become automatic sequences. Automatic sequences reduce decision load. Reduced decision load conserves metabolic energy. The brain favors efficiency, and identity forms inside this efficiency. Identity can be understood as a high-level summary of repeated neural activity. It encodes behavioral tendencies, emotional reactions, preferred interpretations, and expected outcomes. This encoding develops slowly, through repetition and reinforcement. The more a pattern runs, the more stable it becomes. Stability lowers cognitive demand. Lower demand increases the likelihood of reuse. Consider how quickly you respond to situations that feel familiar. The brain has already calculated probabilities. Prediction precedes conscious awareness. Response flows through established pathways. Neuroscientist Carl Friston describes the brain as an organ that minimizes prediction error. Internal models continuously forecast what is likely to happen next. When incoming information matches expectation, neural signaling remains efficient. When mismatch occurs, error signals increase. Large prediction errors create pressure to update internal models. Updating requires energy. Energy allocation influences how much change the system tolerates. This is why brief bursts of new behavior rarely produce structural change. The internal model remains dominant. Prediction remains weighted toward past repetition. Memory plays a central role. Experiences associated with strong emotion receive greater neural weighting. Weighted experiences shape expectation, strength. Expectation strength influences interpretation of new events. Interpretation reinforces the model. Imagine someone who has repeated the experience of social rejection early in life. The brain encodes that pattern. Future ambiguous social cues get filtered through that expectation. Neutral expressions become interpreted as disapproval. Interpretation strengthens the existing prediction. No conscious decision is required. The architecture runs automatically. The medial prefrontal cortex participates in organizing self-referential information. Repeated reflection on personal traits strengthens representational stability. Statements like, "This is just who I am," consolidate neural patterns. Consolidation reduces variability. Variability introduces uncertainty. Uncertainty increases metabolic demand. The nervous system registers uncertainty as tension. Tension encourages retreat toward familiar patterns. Autonomic responses contribute to this loop. Heart rate variability shifts in response to anticipated outcomes. Cortisol levels adjust under perceived threat. The body prepares for predicted scenarios before conscious thought labels them. Emotions emerge from this predictive process. The brain forecasts bodily states and assigns meaning based on prior experience. An elevated heart rate in one context becomes excitement. In another context, it becomes anxiety. Prediction determines interpretation. Beliefs function within the same architecture. They represent stable expectations about how the world behaves. Information that aligns with expectation integrates smoothly. Information that deviates generates error signals. Sustained exposure to discrepancy can reshape belief structures. Brief exposure rarely does. Action follows prediction. Under active inference models, behavior serves to reduce uncertainty. Individuals gravitate toward environments that confirm internal models. Confirmation reduces error signals. Reduced error stabilizes the system. The system does not aim for abstract truth. It aims for coherence. Coherence supports social functioning. Predictable behavior enhances trust assessments. Trust stabilizes relationships. Stable relationships reinforce identity narratives. Every social interaction feeds data back into the predictive loop. Consider professional identity. Repeated experiences of competence strengthen expectation of competence. Expectation influences posture, tone, and decision speed. Observed behavior elicits specific feedback from others. Feedback confirms internal models. The loop deepens. Change requires repeated contradiction of established prediction. Repetition builds new pathways. New pathways gradually shift baseline probability. Shifted probability modifies identity representation. Neuroplasticity supports this restructuring. Synaptic connections strengthen through sustained activation. Myelination increases transmission speed along frequently used pathways. Structural change follows repetition over time. Short-lived motivation produces minimal structural alteration. Consistent behavioral deviation produces measurable neural change. Identity therefore emerges as an evolving statistical structure. It reflects density of repetition. It reflects weighting of memory. It reflects accumulated prediction. Subjective experience feels personal and narrative-driven. At the neural level, it is probabilistic and dynamic. The brain continues modeling. Models continue compressing experience into patterns. Patterns guide perception, belief, and action. The pull back to familiar behavior reflects structural efficiency. The sensation of friction reflects prediction error. The slow pace of change reflects metabolic constraint. Understanding this architecture shifts interpretation of struggle. Because struggle signals recalibration. Recalibration consumes energy. Energy allocation determines pace. The system protects coherence until sustained evidence justifies revision. Identity remains active beneath awareness. Prediction remains active beneath perception. Repetition remains the sculptor of structure. Behavior writes neural probability, which then shapes future behavior. The architecture runs continuously, and every repetition actually counts. Now you know. No more excuses. Like this way of learning? Subscribe.